Hello, captains, and welcome back to my channel. I am your host, USS Endeavor, and we are aboard the Tier 6 alternate Russian tech tree cruiser, the Tallinn. Now, when this first ship dropped, which actually I had to look it up, back in October of 2021 is when the alternate Russian cruiser line for the tech trees became available. It wasn't until a year later that the Tallinn actually got a nerf. It got nerfed on the update for October of 2022. So for an entire year, it had better main battery reload, and it had better AP shell damage. And the stock hull was the only thing that was a little weird. You actually had to upgrade the stock blueprint in order to get the better armor scheme. But now it just comes stock from the get-go whenever you buy it. And I'll be honest, I loved this ship when it first came out. In fact, I considered it the best of the tech tree line, which back then was when Riga was the top at Tier 7. Since then, we've gotten the Petro and then the Stalingrad, obviously being the legendary ship. But for the alternate tech tree ships themselves, this by far was the best ship, in my opinion. I mean, you had everything you needed. You had great AP shells. You had really decent armor for the tier. And it came equipped with a 9-kilometer radar at Tier 6, which was incredible. And then once the nerf happened, something just happened with this ship with me. And I don't know, maybe it's more of a psychological thing, but it just doesn't seem to be performing just as well as I would have hoped. But that's just me personally. I'm sure some of you guys are doing a lot better with the ship than I am. But let's take a look at the build that we're using, everything that we have done up to this point. And we'll show you a couple of gameplays, and I'll give you my thoughts along the way. So here we go. Nikolai Kuznetsov. No surprises here. This is going to be the last time that I actually keep this build. When I get to the Riga, I am going to switch a couple of things up, but for right now, it's the exact same as when we took out the Gorky and the Kotovsky. And because this is the last ship you get that's equipped with torpedoes, and I don't know, I just like to keep it the way it was, but when I got to the Riga, I did notice that there were a couple of things that I wanted to change around, so that's what I did. So that's what we have here. On to the mod slots. You have 3 of them now because you're at Tier 6. First, we're using Aiming Systems mod like we did before. Second is Propulsion mod because I'm really enjoying that mod perk. I want to get up to speed as fast as I can. And last, we're using the Concealment mod. So on to the consumables that you have. You have a sonar, which now detects up to 4.2 kilometers. And the radar, like I said, it comes equipped with a radar. It's not a long duration. You're at Tier 6, so they don't give you the best of the best. But 9 kilometers, even for 15 seconds, is great for information, and that's key in this game. On to your survivability. You have 36,000 hit points, which doesn't feel like a whole lot. But, again, you have a little bit better of an armor scheme, and we'll go over that at the end, and it does make the survivability feel a little bit longer than the 36,000 advertised. Your artillery shells, you have the same 180 millimeters as the Gorky, but you have 12 of them now in 4x3 launchers, 2 turrets in the front, 2 in the back. They reach out at a really long range, over 18 clicks with this build. 13.1 second reload feels long, and it is. That's one of the areas that it did get nerfed. And but the AP shells are still good, even though they did reduce the damage from 4,650, I think, to 4,400. 14% fire chance. You do have some secondaries on this, but the main battery guns is really where it's all at. Your torpedoes. Again, this is the last ship of the tech tree line that gets equipped with torpedoes. I guess they quote-unquote save the best for last, but they're still not all that great. Very good defensive torpedoes now at 2 quintuple launchers, so 10 torpedoes, and but they only reach out to 4 kilometers, although they are fast, but they're very, very short range. AA defense is actually quite respectable at an 80 rating. You started at 5 and you get all of it at 3.5, so not bad AA for the ship. Maneuverability is still pretty bad in the turning circle radius. It's something that you just got to get used to with this line. It has a really poor turning circle radius. 10.9 second rudder shift, 35.6 knot maximum speed. Your concealment, because we spec'd into it, has actually 10.8 6.8 kilometers, which is actually not that bad for a cruiser at this tier. 6.8 detectable by air, and 7.3 if you're firing from smoke. So that's the concealment, that's the stats. Let's get to the armor. When it comes to your armor, you're coated in 25 millimeters, which can only bounce 14-inch shells. And let's be honest, you're here at tier 6, so you're going to go up against 16-inch shells, some 15s, and you're also going to go up against 14-inch shells as well. So knowing the shell type and the battleship that you're going up against is definitely going to help with your survivability on how you need to appropriately angle or the distance in which you need to engage your targets. Now, your upper deck actually has 27 millimeters of armor, so now you can bounce 15-inch shells if angled appropriately. But this is the area I really wanted to focus on, your citadel, which is a little bit different than anything that you've come across yet with this line. It's actually a hexagonal shape that's equipped with slopes, meaning that as you get closer, those angled slopes for your citadel can actually help against battleships citadeling you from close range. And as you noticed, it sits right at, if not just below, the waterline. So this is a very different citadel than you're used to. All right, captains, here we are on the map North. I'm by myself. It is a tier 6, tier 7 lobby, so I am technically bottom tier. And the first thing I do every time I load up into these matches is I look at the battleships, because I'm trying to see what can I bow tank, what can I angle against, if any. And the Carcassonne, the Gneisenau, and the Richelieu all have 15-inch shells, which unfortunately I cannot bow tank with my 25 millimeters of armor. However, my upper deck, I can bounce those if they're using AP. But because my superstructure is in the way, I'm going to take a lot more raw damage just by it going through my superstructure. So those are things that you kind of have to be aware of, think about, and just kind of understand. Now, as we're starting the game, there are 2 destroyers per side, and unfortunately, we don't get one of those destroyers that spawn out here at Alpha. And if you're familiar with the map North, a lot of people make this move. Me being the aggressive player and the fact that I don't have any spotting or anybody that can take this cap relatively quickly makes me want to make this play and get into the cap as soon as I possibly can. There we briefly spot the Baltimore, and I'm going to have a lot of support from my team behind me. We got an Anchorage, and we actually have a tier 6 Charlemagne, which I rarely see that thing out in the waters. So I didn't put a lot of hope into him helping me, because that thing is not really well known for its being good overall. But this guy actually does really well on that ship. So just goes to show that it's not always the ship, it's the captain behind it. So now we've successfully managed to make it in here without getting spotted into the cap. And I'm kind of keeping the cap in my window of view so that I can see when am I going to get contested, if any. And there we get hit by the Hydro. So something is awfully close to us. And now it's contested. The Anchorage decides to pull up and smoke up, but then turn broadside to everything, which is kind of unfortunate, because being hydroed, they're going to see not only these torpedoes coming, he is spotting the torpedoes also coming. So, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. I am smoked up, and I just finally drift out of that hydro range. So now I'm completely concealed, and I'm not quite sure if the island is in a position where I can take shots. There's no mountain icon, so I feel like I need to go ahead and take this, and I don't get spotted. So the island was concealing me as we get 2 citadels on our very first salvo against that Megami. We pop our hydro just in case he decides to throw more. We get another salvo off, and we're going to chunk him for another 2 citadels, really crippling him and bringing him down. The Baltimore has a really good 27 millimeter armor scheme, but these shells are also really good for its penetration, and we're able to take out a turret right there. And that's when we noticed the Tallinn, I'm guessing I'm saying that right, the new French heavy cruiser from the alternate French cruiser line that just dropped this update, which has virtually no armor. He made a really good play where he went way out on the edge and used his speed to be able to get out there, and had no idea he was there until just recently. But that's what I'm talking about. These shells are really good at penetrating at distance. They hold their penetration very, very well. And because of this smoke screen, not only were we able to get these shots off, but we're still able to take the cap, which is huge. Being able to take the cap this early, this aggressive, even with that ship out there on the edge, is pretty impressive. So I have to thank the anchorage for dropping that for me. However, the smoke screen has now dissipated, so any shots that I'm going to be taking up to this point, I'm probably going to get spotted now. Plus, every time he shoots, he ends up going dark before he gets another shot off. Because his reload is so long in duration, he actually goes unspotted before he has an opportunity to shoot again. So now that this cap is done and our friendly Charlemagne has decided to push way out there, he's gonna kind of be the bait on the hook for these other ships to be taking shots at. And while they're taking shots at him, I am going to be backing him up. As you can see, they're engaging him. He was able to successfully take out both the Mogami and the Baltimore single-handedly, pretty much. And that's awfully impressive considering he's in a tier 6 Charlemagne. Now, the Mogami was a little weak. We had taken some good hits off of him. And the Baltimore, well, it's a Baltimore. But all that being said, he needs help, so I'm here to give him support. And yes, they're going to be kind of free shots because nobody's really going to be focusing me. He's the one that's awfully low. And unfortunately, we're not really able to get any citadels against this ship. It's not very well armored at all. But we are whittling him down. He is taking hits also from the Charlemagne. The Charlemagne's HE is actually pretty impressive. As you can see, he's getting chunked hard by that ship. And although he is awfully low, I think that the enemy French cruiser is also low enough that I think I can let him just kind of do his thing over there. I don't want to chase that ship all the way on the edge of the map. He's already doing that. He's committed to taking that thing out. They're both committed to taking each other out. So I'm just going to kind of take free shots until I can find another ship that I can engage. And speaking of other ships to engage, that's when I noticed that we detect the another enemy cruiser that's right off our bow. So we're going to go ahead and switch our targets to him, as he is definitely focusing us. And as he's flat broadside, I guess he realizes that he needs to kind of turn out. So at first, I didn't think that these were going to actually do anything, but we actually get a lucky citadel as he's angled really well. And so I'm really thankful to see that the enemy French cruiser's down. Unfortunately, our Charlemagne went down, but he ended up taking out 3 of those ships, which was very good. And here we show the power of the AP and the weakness of the turning circle radius. I didn't see these things coming. I didn't have my hydro up, but even spotting them, I was like, oh gosh, because you just can't turn very well. And then we damage con immediately, and then immediately get nailed by the Richelieu, who's shooting HE at us. And thankfully it's a cruiser and not a battleship. The fire duration is only 30 seconds and not a minute. Otherwise, this would have burned quite a ways. And we almost screw up and drift right into the next set of torpedoes from the Mogami. So even though we did a devastating hit against him, he definitely hurt us with his torpedoes. And then the Richelieu, who I really felt should have been shooting AP on that salvo, probably would have finished this off. But again, shooting HE at us, that's not going to work. And now he's whittled down enough to where maybe we can take him out, and we do. And he's the last ship, believe it or not. So that's going to do it for that game. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do another video, because this one went kind of quick. But we still did top of the leaderboard in a tier 6. And the Charlemagne, who's also a tier 6, came up in second behind me, which was actually pretty impressive considering the fact that 2 tier 6s that do well in a tier 7 lobby is pretty impressive. All right, captains. For our second game, we're on Northern Waters, and it is a domination game mode. We spawn on the Charlie side, and it's also a mixed tier 6, tier 7 lobby like the last game. And if you notice, there is a division of destroyers on our team, which usually can be a good thing or a very bad thing. Typically, people who run in divisions like to work together, meaning they like to be in close proximity with one another, and they spawn mid. However, this division knows what they're doing, and instead of clumping up together, they decide to do the right thing, and they split up, and one destroyer goes to the left, to Alpha, the other goes to Charlie. I know, rare, right? At first I was like, oh boy, this isn't going to be very good, and then I ended up looking at the mini-map, and I noticed that although our anchorage is starting to push away from the Charlie cap, as you can see, the destroyers are splitting up and going to the respective caps like I talked about. So, good on our destroyers and a little questionable from our anchorage. But he doesn't exactly stay away for that long. He is going to help us out on this side. So, it is always good to see that you have teammates that know how to properly go for the objectives. And in this particular case, if we had had no spotting, our game probably would not have been nearly as good as it could have been. This is a team game after all. So I'm just kind of holding up right here behind the island, and I'm kind of waiting for that destroyer to get a little bit closer. And as he starts to cross that threshold of being out in front, I'm going to start mirroring his move into Charlie. As you can see, it's starting to get capped, so something is definitely in here destroyer-wise. There we spot an halt that's way out there in the distance, and then the Venom, which shows up, is now lit up. Our destroyer has done a good job of spotting him, so we need to chime in and help out as best as we can. He gets absolutely whacked. Not by us. We only did 3 overpins because we only did 1,300 damage. Somebody else hit him pretty good, which I can only assume was the anchorage that I talked about. But now that he's gone dark, he's smoked up because he realizes I'm about to die, and that's where our radar comes into play as we pop it. We're the only one that gets to see him for 5 seconds, so this shot is free, and we take him out. Unfortunately, our friendly Venom also gets hit by a torpedo, crippling him, and then that's when we notice the La Terrible, which is out here on the flank as well. So, whereas our destroyers played it very well in splitting up, the enemy destroyers, which they only have 2 of, both decided to come to Charlie, and one of them's already gone. So that's a huge sign and a good sign for us that our teammates, if they're paying attention over at Alpha, should be able to take Alpha without having to worry about any type of destroyer threat over there. So that's something you always have to be aware of. Always keep looking at the mini-map. As you can see, there is that destroyer icon. It's surrounded with white and black to show its last known position. So if you're paying attention and you notice that, and one of the destroyers is off the board, you know you no longer have an issue at Alpha, or if you're spawned over on that side. So that's kind of what I do. That's why the information that the mini-map provides is so important to look at and to be aware of and constantly keep looking at. Map awareness is huge in this game. Always looking down the binoculars and not looking at the mini-map is not going to work out for you in the long term. And veteran players know how to balance that accordingly. So, on to this actual game. Again, we have the cap now. We do know that that other destroyer is out here. This Fiji is pushing in here rather aggressively. And our AP shells, if we hit him just right, can absolutely wipe him off the board. Unfortunately, half our shells get taken out by that. I think we would have done a little bit better than just one Citadel had we not ruined our shot by hitting the mountain. And then all these other subsequent shots come in as he's trying to smoke up, and he just gets absolutely deleted. So that ship is now gone. We are up by 1. Still got to worry about this destroyer who has decided to tuck tail and kind of reposition, running out the way. Thankful for our destroyer who is continuing to spot. We do get a couple hits, but we're using AP. Unfortunately, every time we've had an available shot against these destroyers, we haven't had HE loaded, which is probably the preferred choice when you're shooting up against destroyers. But that's what we had, and it's not a bad idea just to take shots anyway. overpen damage. Even with these shells, that's still a significant amount when you're talking about a destroyer. But we have swapped over to the HE, and we're taking a hit, or we're going to take a salvo at the Terrible, but he angles back to the other direction, and we kind of whiff that shot. Here I'm just trying to figure out what's the best play. Where am I supposed to go? How can I really help my team? I am spotted right now, but I want to try and utilize some of these islands to be able to help me not get spotted. But unfortunately, that San Diego, which is way out there on the Alpha side, is unfortunately able to spot me. And when I realize that, I start to back up because I don't want to start getting focused by these battleships. So I do jockey my speed a little bit, but then that's when I notice the San Diego decides to park behind the island, more likely to try and spam me. And now I'm just kind of in a really hot situation. I don't really have any islands that I can sit behind because I'm not in a very good position. I'm going to say that right off the bat. I don't like how I've gotten myself in this situation, and now it's just kind of like, okay, I got to back up and I got to get out of here. You're going to see shots raining in from the left-hand side. That's from the San Diego. And but the Gneisenau, unfortunately, or fortunately for me, maybe not for him, he decides to tuck tail and run. If he would have pushed in, that probably would have really ruined my day because I wouldn't have been able to have angled against him and all these other ships. But oddly enough, I haven't lost a whole lot. Again, I've got AP against, yet again, the destroyer, but I am able to get a really good RNG roll, and we're able to take him off the board. So now that both destroyers are gone, their spotting ability has drastically reduced. And so now I can utilize these islands a little bit better as we finally go unspotted. And so now at this point, looking at the score, looking at the ship count, I don't really feel like we need to push. And that's where I think a lot of people get a little zealous. Now, I've been guilty of it. Trust me. There are even videos that I've done really well in where I'm like, I don't need to make this play. But I feel confident in my abilities to do it, so I do. And in those games, if we would have lost, I would have felt really bad because that's not the winning play. And just like I'm showing right here, the winning play is not to push into these guys. It's actually to turn around and run away. Reason for that is because that can happen. Your team can now start to be whittled down, and now we're not looking at a ship advantage. We're tied. Now, we do have the cap control, which is huge, but they're starting to pull Alpha. So I'm going to start making my way back to my spawn side as we get a hit on the San Diego. We're whittling him down, and because our shells have a much better velocity, hitting him at this range is much easier for us than for him to hit us. His shells, although they can clear that island, have a harder time reaching me because they are a lot floatier. They remind me of the Atlanta in that fashion, and we have done an awfully good trade. As you can see, our health is almost hasn't moved at all, where his has pretty much gotten down to nothing. And that whole sequence was possible because our destroyer was in a position to be able to spot him. Even though he's behind the island, he still lit up. So kudos to our destroyer players for knowing how to provide the intelligence data that everybody screams about without us having to actually scream about it. So here in this last little section, it's just more cleanup at this point, but I'm still trying to be aware of the fact that at any point we could get whittled down, and I don't want to be in a situation where I have to face a bunch of ships by myself. Now, the Cherbourg is coming up. He's not focusing us right now, but I knew in this moment that as soon as I got spotted by the Cherbourg, his division partner, which is that San Diego behind the island, was going to start opening up on us. So I decided to slow down. I stop. I start to bow tank this guy. Now, he has 305 millimeter shells, but because we have the 25 millimeters of armor, we can actually bounce all of his shells. So we're in the perfect position to be able to do that. And just like on cue, that San Diego is raining down his SAP on us. But we were aware that that was happening. we stop, we start to reverse, we're going to make it just a lot harder for him to hit us. Now, he's starting to drift out just a little bit too far because he needs to try and get some shells on this cruiser that's going up against the Cherbourg. And he is going to be a little successful in being able to help. But we have good range. He is flat broadside. We have really good penetration and velocity on these shells. And I got to be honest, he got away with one right here. I thought I had him right there. We whittle him down to practically nothing. He's backing up on the island. I think we can clear it. Let's cross our fingers and see if it's just enough to be able to get over. And we do. So now he is finally gone. His div mate is gone. And the one thing that I was afraid was going to happen to us, our team was able to do to the red team. And now we are in an overwhelmingly convincing position to win this game, so long as we don't throw away our ships to these last two battleships, which consequently are both the on halt. Now, at this point, I'll just go ahead and talk about the Tallinn because, again, I really, really like this ship, but since the nerf, something's happened to where it just doesn't feel the same to me. If any of you guys have been around long enough to have had the opportunity to play this thing when it first came out and got to enjoy it for the entire year that it was in its better state, does it still feel like it's okay? I mean, I'd really like to know. Maybe it's just me. It could just be me. I don't know. But I just don't feel like it performs quite as well as it was in its glory days. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to see those again. It is a little bit harder, it seems, to get the shells on target like I'd like. You get 12 of them, and I don't know. It just felt like I wasn't getting as many solid salvos like I was used to. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not aiming correctly. You guys be the judge of that. I don't claim to be the best cruiser player. It is the one I'm most familiar with, and it is the play style that I enjoy playing the most. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that. The Tallinn's not a bad ship. It's really not. I think that when they nerfed it, it did bring it. It's not what I would consider the best ship of the Tech Tree Cruiser line, but to be honest, it really shouldn't be. The tier, as you go up the tiers, you want to make it needs to feel like the ships get better. And the Tallinn is definitely a step up from the Gorky. There's an argument that could be made on whether it's better than the Riga. We'll look at the Riga next, and we'll kind of make our own synopsis of that. I do know that for a lot of people, the Riga was a very tough ship to play, but it recently got buffed. So we need to look into that more as we finally finish off that game and come in first place yet again. So anyways, that's a look at the Tallinn, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for tuning in. As always, like, share, subscribe, comment. The next ship, like I said, is going to be the Riga. We'll look at everything from the ground up, let you know our thoughts, and show you some gameplay on how we play her. Thank you again, Captain, so very much for being here and being a part of this journey with me. I'm so very thankful for each and every one of you. And so until next time, this is the USS Endeavor signing off.